Okay, everybody, I think we better make a start. So welcome back, and two more fabulous speakers for us in this next session. It's my great pleasure to introduce the next speakers, with Erica, who's chair of Southport KPA, and Erica and I have known each other for a little while. And somebody who I got to know a little bit better yesterday is Zach. They're going to talk about a patient's journey with a child who has additional needs. So welcome, Erica and Zach.
Wow, there's a lot more people than I realised. You're okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Erica, this is Zach. And I am chair of the Southport KPA, as David's just said. And yeah, we're here just to let you know, like, our story, because not a lot through, like, our journey and my journey being in the KPA, there's not enough said about children and what children go through, and especially people with learning disabilities, even learning disabilities as adults. And there's been so many different speakers today, like, you know, Zach's going through what you went through at 17, 18. He's doing it right now. He's rebelling. He's been an absolute pain in the backside. Absolute pain in the backside. And it's really, really difficult because he's rebelling against everything. And he's got autism, he's got ADHD, and he's got PDA as well. PDA is pathological dependence avoidance. And it's an umbrella coming off autism. And anything I say, he does the opposite, and it's always got to be a battle of persuasion with everything. But going right from the beginning, Zach was 2.5, see, I remembered. Yeah. When he was diagnosed with CKD, he got HUS, and it damaged both of his kidneys. And through the longest time, I knew that there was something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And everyone was just saying it because he was getting treated like a baby, he was getting mollycoddled, and we needed to make him have more independence, do things for himself. And we were going to clinics, and it was a battle trying to get him to do his bloods. We'd end up having to pin him down, and he'd have to have, what did you call it?
I've had a lot of things.
Giggle gas.
Yeah.
The Entonox. He used to have Entonox to help him have his bloods done. And it would help, but it'd have to be the right mouthpiece. It'd have to have the plasters ready. In a certain place, he'd have to have the gauze. He'd have to have the person standing on the right side of him. He'd have to be able to see. And if it wasn't like that, all hell would break loose. And then moving on for a few years past that, the team at Alder Hay were brilliant with him. He had a play therapist who helped him called Michelle, and she helped you work through things, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can stand here, you know, and still talking about you too. Yeah, she helped him a lot trying to get over his fears, and, you know, it worked after a while.
Yeah.
Still not a fan of cannulas though, are you?
Nope.
Still not fun. And he's 18 and he's got tattoos. I don't understand that.
Don't tell Mum.
So it'll say, got tattoos, can't moan about needles anymore. That's the rule. That is the rule.
Shot myself in the foot with that one.
You did. So goes to when he was 8. I'm sorry, we haven't wrote anything. There was absolutely no point because he would just interrupt me and say things, so we're winging it like we wing life. Yeah. You have to being a kidney patient or a parent of a kidney patient, and the additional needs. There's lots to go into it, and I think the more awareness around neurodiversity, around kidney disease, the better. I really, really do. And he had his first transplant when he was 8 years old. What year?
2014.
2014. And during that time, we had so many issues because we didn't know that he was autistic at that time. We didn't know he had ADHD. And there was nothing planned. There was nothing ready. So we went into it completely blind. And we struggled with him having to take tablets. We struggled when he had a catheter. He was kicking off and having a major meltdown, and the nurse who was there trying to talk him down ended up pulling it out very fast, and he wasn't prepared for it. So that kind of put I'm never going to hospital again. I hate nurses. I hate hospital. So it was starting all over again when we moved back to Alder Hey from having his transplant. And there was a lot of work gone into it. And I fought for his diagnosis because I knew he needed the help and he needed the support. And we got to just before you went on to dialysis, wasn't it? And then when you got your diagnosis and we met Laura and Georgia.
Yeah, who were on dialysis at that point.
Who were the learning disability nurses.
Yeah.
And what, do you remember doing your passport with them?
No.
Yeah, so tell me about your one-page profile.
So I got a one-page profile done for them, and it was basically if I ever went into a new hospital or anywhere new that was like medical or something like that, that I could give that to them, and it basically told them everything about me, how I like my blood's done, how like basically who I am, and it was then less of a battle because they knew everything to do, and once they did that, it was all right. So.
And if you didn't want to talk, you didn't have to talk because all the information was down, it was ready. And the age that Zach was at the time coming up to going on to dialysis was like 14, 15 years old. And we've just done a bit of an interview with Independence Direct as well. We managed to get these bags, these pouchy shower bags. And once he had his neckline in, that made things so much easier and less stressful for me and less stressful for Zach as well, because he was able to have his independence to go and shower, because what 14, 15-year-old wants their parents to go and shower them because they've got, they're covering their line with a towel. We were having to lean over the shower, weren't we, to wash your hair, and then we were having to help you wash.
Yeah.
And it completely gave you your independence, didn't it?
Yeah.
Which was the main thing.
I felt like I could just like do everything that I originally did. I felt like I could do it all like by myself again and didn't have to rely on anyone.
Due to the autism and the ADHD, he doesn't like people touching his face, or he doesn't like anything touching his face. So that cut out that battle for us. So anyone who's on dialysis, please, they do change your life. They really do. Really do. And it leads us on to dialysis, which was the biggest battle we've ever been through in our life. I said, bearing in mind Zach's been on dialysis 3 times, but this by far was the hardest.
You go from 2 weeks to almost 3 years in about 10 years, something like, well no, about 7 years.
Your first kidney lasted 7 years, and then it was COVID that caused his kidney to basically die off. And you ended up on dialysis, hemodialysis, and due to the PDA and the ADHD, Zach refused to eat, was over drinking. We had many admissions that we had to get him admitted as well, and it was, you were put in a ward, put in the private room in the ward.
72-hour watch.
He was put on a 72-hour psych hold because he was trying to drink from the shower, trying to drink from the sink, and even got to the point where one of the nurses actually caught him trying to drink from the toilet. He was that desperate to get a drink, and he couldn't get it from anywhere else, and he was that desperate. Luckily, they caught him, but we understood the logic, because when Zach was saying it, he was flushing the toilet and toilet water running to him was fresh water. So I understood the logic, and because he's impulsive, it was going to the bathroom to go to the toilet, but when he's there, it's, water. And the over drinking, you were on 100 ml fluid restriction?
Well, I was on 200 mils, and then I had 40 juice, which I ended up getting an NG tube for because of how low my weight went. And then I had 40 juice. So I had like the Rennie step and then the 40 juice.
But why didn't you want to eat?
It wasn't what I wanted, and obviously being autistic, I was used to having what I wanted for 7 years, so going off that, I was like, well, if I can't have what I want, then I'm not going to eat.
Which was an uphill battle. Again, was getting admitted because he was refusing to eat. And it was hard because my husband had to take 6 months off because we couldn't trust him in the house if we went to work, because he'd try and get fluid from wherever he could. So we worked with the renal psychologist, we worked with the learning disability team, and this is where the PDA comes into it, because no matter what anyone said to him, it was like blinkers, and he wouldn't listen because he knew. And we turned around and said, if you don't eat, you're going to end up with an NG tube. He ended up with an NG tube. So everything we said would happen, but he still didn't believe it until it happened. And he's a very, very, very literal thinker. I mean, I found him brushing his forehead with toothpaste because he thought the cool mint would bring his temperature down. Every time the nurses said, come on, Zach, hop on to your chair to have dialysis, he'd hop on and then fall off. So you've definitely made life interesting.
Of course you have.
Definitely made life interesting. But there does need to be more support out there. So, like I said, for young people and for adults as well, whoever's got learning disabilities, they might look, I'm going to say, neurotypical on the outside, but you don't know what they're going through until you talk to them. And like Zach's going through this stage, like Sam said, you know, he's rebelling. He's going out drinking with his friends and drinking everything that he shouldn't. For someone who's got high blood pressure and he's got kidney disease, he's drinking vodka and Red Bull and Jaeger bombs. The worst. He also works in Starbucks. Coffee for the high blood pressure. It's great. But his work have been amazing, haven't they?
Yeah.
In everything, any appointment.
Like, all I need to do is basically let my boss know when my hospital appointment's on. He's like, yeah, no worries. And that's it. I don't even have to like worry about covering my shift or anything. He just says, yeah, no worries, and just books me off.
And with your autism and all that, what do they do to help you?
They like write lists out for me, whereas like, because we've obviously got a set amount of things that we've got to do before we like close down, they write me a list and they say, right, this is what needs to be done before you go. And
they've been really good, really supportive, and they've really taken him under his wing. Like, since having it, he had his transplant in January, and since having that, we're going through the Ready Steady Go, you know, and we need, it's fantastic, the Ready Steady Go, it really, really is, but it needs to be more centred around people with neurodiversity. And because they don't necessarily understand, they can read the questions and they get it, but they don't necessarily understand. Because Zach will say yes. If you said, oh, you've got to have a lung transplant, Zach could go, okay. He'd just say yes to anything. And you'd think, oh, well, he actually understands what you're saying, but he doesn't. You ask him what his medications are, he probably could tell you about 3. And he misses medications sometimes. So there's got to be lots of support and lots of watching, and your job sort of never ends as a parent. As you know, people here, your job's never over as a parent anyway, but you have to be more watchful. You know, like I said, my husband had to take 6 months off because we couldn't trust him at home, because we didn't know what he was doing, if he was tipping his drinks away, he wasn't drinking his nutritional drinks to help him gain weight. And we had to sit and watch him in the shower because he'd drink from the shower. And the amount of times that he would be overloaded and have to have extra dialysis. I mean, this time last year, we were actually in hospital because one time coming off dialysis, he ended up having a seizure because his blood pressure went too low. And you had a brain bleed, didn't you?
Smacked my neck, had a massive bruise going basically from my ear, like down to about, say, there, and it was like, part of it was purple, and cracked my head open, had a brain bleed, and had to have surgery on it.
But even going through that, he didn't understand the consequences of that was down to the fact that he was over drinking, and the dialysis session had to be a bit harder on him, because they had to take more off. They had to take, I think it was 2.5 litres they had to do isolating, and the rest, there was 4 litres they had to take off. So it was a lot for his body. And that was an issue that we had to face, because you don't really understand consequences sometimes, do you?
No.
He's, like I said, wings it like we always wing life, isn't that right?
Yep.
But, I mean, that's all we've really got to say. So if you, yeah. We can go and sit over there for questions. You want to answer some questions?
Because we finished a little bit early, we can take some questions if you have any questions for Erica and Zach. I think we've got one there and then over there. One at the front, I think, first, and then on the left.
Good afternoon, my name is Rahana and I'm from Bradford. Quick question, Erica. Considering what you've been through with your stepson, did you get any moral support? Because obviously it's been quite daunting and quite stressing for you and your husband.
Once we got his diagnosis, there was a little bit extra support that we got given because we learned about what the autism, the PDA and the ADHD, what that could mean. So it was us learning different strategies on how to, so that sounds bad, but handle that in a different way. Because it doesn't make, it keeps me on my toes.
Thank you.
Brian Turner again from West London Kidney Patients Association. It's not so much a question. Obviously, Zach's had to learn the hard way regarding his fluid intake. I'm afraid we all have to do it, but I found an answer that might be useful to you. Rather than take the actual liquid, try Tic Tacs. Just one under the tongue, helps the saliva, and you can go a couple of hours now without any fluids. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In the middle, we've got a question.
Hi, sorry, it's me again, Arvind. Just to say, the anxiety you feel and also what's going on with Zach, I think if the paediatric team aren't introducing you to the adult team and putting plans in place and allaying your anxiety, then I think we as a group are doing you a disservice. Because you would be somebody, if you're at our hospital, you'd be meeting the adults at least 4 to 5 times before you moved over to adult services, and you'd be meeting the team as well. One, to allay your anxieties, and also for Zach as well, and also to find strategies that will help him to actually be successful in adult services. You don't have to remember everything, but there's loads of different solutions that are out there. And one of the solutions that we did speak about is something called Transplant Hero app, which is a great one for putting your medications on board. You can update them, and when the medical team sees them, they can also update it, so it's there, and you can actually share that with anyone if you haven't heard of it. And also you put your fluid allowance on there as well, because some patients are fluid restricted, some patients need a lot of fluid, and the medical team won't know what it is if you crash land in a different centre. Yeah. And the other thing that you also, sorry, I don't mean to preach, so I do apologise. These are just situations I'm thinking of. We had a young girl that used to have, this is where we put emergency care plans in place, 5 litres of fluid a day, needed 200 millimoles of potassium. She gets diarrhoea. That gets up to 10 litres a day, needing 400 millimoles of potassium, and also bicarbonate, which are some of these salts. She would have died if we hadn't had an emergency plan in place, because she ended up in a hospital that didn't know her. So patients are dying sometimes unnecessarily. And I'm sure you guys think that anyway, and if you don't think that, then I'm so sorry I've scared you, because that's not the case. But the thing is to make sure, if you've got an unusual condition or something, make sure that you have an emergency care plan, so if you crash land anywhere else, that they can actually help you out, because that's important. But that 16 plus pathway I spoke about, that will actually factor in those joint appointments, and you can insist on joint appointments.
Yeah,
yeah?
Thank you.
Because the MDT will.
Thank you. One last question and then we'll move on. At the bottom.
I'm sure you can all hear me. If there was a queue from here to London, berating stepmothers, I'd be at the front of it. And I just want to say thank you for restoring my faith in stepmothers. I had one. My mother died when I was 2 years old, and I grew up with a stepmother who couldn't stand the sight of me. So thank you very much for being such a wonderful stepmother.
Thank you very much. I'd do anything for this boy. He's been in my life since he was 2, and I've pushed and pushed for everything for him. Anything he needed, anything he wanted, I've pushed for it. Because I know how difficult it is. My nan was a kidney patient for over 20 years, and she never got a chance to have a transplant. And she was on dialysis, and I know how difficult it is. Like, I know that, like, kidney patients feel cold, and like having your winter fuel allowance taken off you is horrendous, because I know what Zach's like, and I will fight until my last breath for this boy.